Once upon a time, you were a whole person. And then trauma came into your life. Some traumas are large one-time events. Other traumas are small, and sometimes smaller traumas get repeated over an extended period of time. But each trauma creates an exile, a little part of ourselves that gets broken off. Some exiles carry the burden of a trauma. Other exiles are parts of our personality that get hidden away to protect them from danger of the trauma. These exiles stay at the age they were created. At some point, though, every exile needs to be unburdened and seen. So what happens next? Exiles, Part 2. Whenever we experience trauma, a part of ourselves gets broken off. Sometimes this is due to a big trauma or a small trauma. Either way, our internal system equates that exile with the trauma, and the exile is stuck at whatever age the trauma happened. So the brain, our system, thinks that that trauma is still happening. So now our system enlists our managers and our firefighters. No, we need managers. They help us with our day-to-day operations. But when they become out of balance and try and manage exiles, they micromanage, we develop an inner critic, and sometimes obsessive-compulsive behaviors. Firefighters try to get us to look away. They numb us, give us addictions, and distract. And for managers and firefighters, we develop protectors. All of these parts are trying to help us. Exiles, Part 3. All exiles, at some point, need to be unburdened and have the opportunity to be reintegrated if they wish to be. But how do we do that? We have managers, firefighters, and protectors all seeming to get in our way. They all have a role in trying to hide the exiles from us and hide us from the exiles. Ultimately, we need to get their permission to help the exile. How we do that is its own video series. Until then, we're going to build a room, and there's a video series on how to build that room. But in that space in our mind where we built the room, we're going to ask the firefighters to become a search and rescue team. We can ask the managers to help build the room for the exiles. And then we can ask protectors to help lead those exiles into that room. The point of this room is to help them feel safe until we can unburden them. Stay tuned for more. Exiles, Part 4. Internal Family Systems Therapy. Campfire time! Every one of us has at least one exile that's trying the hardest to be noticed. Whether this exile is associated with a big trauma or a small trauma, it doesn't matter. It's the one that's crying out the loudest to be unburdened. Now, of course, we have managers and firefighters and protectors trying to protect the exile from us and us from the exile, because the system thinks that this exile who is stuck at the age of the trauma is still undergoing the trauma. So the first step is to ask these protectors to give us a name, just a name, for the exile. Nothing to do with the trauma itself, just a name, like Fred or Jane or whatever. Next is to get in touch with self, which will be part of the meditation. Self is loving and compassionate and has full of curiosity and gratitude for the parts that have been helping. Exiles, Part 5A, Internal Family Systems Therapy. Let the healing begin. It's important to set the intention because we have very upset exiles and we have protectors trying to keep them away from us. But exiles are just a part of us. Some carry the burdens of past trauma. Some are guarding precious parts of ourselves. But they're all sad, and they need a place where they can be happy and know that they are loved until they can be unburdened. So we need to enlist the help of managers who can become builders of the room for the exile. And then we need firefighters to help us find the exiles rather than trying to hide them from us. And then we need the protectors to help escort them to the room, to protect them on their journey. The goal is to build a beautiful, happy place for these exiles to live until they can be unburdened. Exiles, Part 5B. Getting all the parts on board. Now this is really important because if we don't get everyone's help, we could get some backlash. In Part 4, our exile got a name, such as Jane. You're going to need a paper and a pen or pencil or something to write with. and spend some time in your mind finding out how many managers, firefighters, or other protectors are associated with this exile. And you're going to ask each one, what is your job? You're going to thank them for doing that. You're going to ask them how old you are, inform them of where you are in life, what would they rather do, and will they please help you? And then you're going to give each one an assignment. Managers will build the room. Firefighters will find your exile, and protectors will help bring them. Exiles Part 5C, Internal Family Systems Therapy. When your protector brings you your exile, the exile might look like a little child. Remember, exiles are stuck at whatever age the trauma occurred at. Your exile may or may not have a gender. Your exile might look like a big scary monster. There's no right or wrong way for this exile to look, but it will go into the room you've created. Now, if you have a system of faith or God of your understanding, this is a great time to incorporate it. You could ask Jesus or Ram Dass or your ancestors to stay in the room with the exile. But take a few minutes and observe the room that your managers have built. When the exile is escorted in by your protectors, pay attention. Does the exile change? Do your feelings about the exile change? Notice those changes and then close the door. This room is just for this exile, and the doorknob is on your side.